And now, from approximately coast to coast, Bob Elliott and Ray Goulding take pleasure in presenting the Bob and Ray Public Radio Program.
Webley Webster here used to...
I used to play the organ when you were on that radio station there in New York.
Biggest hit was Jealousy, I remember.
Yes, sir. Big studio organ. I used to play
and
it
the
all
longest
the time.
introduction of any song.
Not many radio stations have a big pipe organ anymore. They just have these little squirt things.
Well, part of it's the financial thing, and these take up less room. You know, we're doing that. We want to welcome you to this Bob and Ray Public Radio Show, brought to you by our generous subscribers. Einbinder, the greatest name in flypaper. This year, more than ever before, make flypaper an important part of your life.
And, of course, by Monongahela, the metal foundry that casts its ingots with the housewife in mind.
We like to kind of think of ourselves as like a city desk at a newspaper, a place where different correspondents and reporters can submit their stories, and we go through them, pick out the best, and broadcast them.
And there's one type of reporter's assignment that's been an old standby on radio, television, and newspapers. Editors always seem to want the views of the man on the street whenever there's a controversial news development. Now, it's hard to say why we value the wisdom of the common man so highly, but no matter, they do. So here's ace Bob and Ray reporter Wally Ballou.
Lee Ballou seeking the views of some passers-by here on the street, views on the latest speech from the White House. Sir, would you step over here and talk to me, please?
You want to talk to me?
Yes, I would like to. Did you hear the president's speech about the economy?
Well, more or less. I was trimming the cat's toenails, but the TV was on in the other room. I could hear somebody talking, and the voice sounded familiar.
It was the president, huh?
Yeah, I recognize his voice from the other room.
Well, now, we're getting the reaction of people like yourself to his address. For instance, the point about declining productivity being a major cause of inflation.
Well, sure. Now, you take the laundromat on the corner. Now, their dryers used to give me 10 minutes for a dime. Now it's up to 15 cents, but they only run for 8 minutes.
Right. Could you step over here where we don't get quite so much traffic noise? When the president spoke of productivity...
Well, I understood him perfectly, and I agree. Now, you take the elastic in my shorts. It never gets dry in 8 minutes, so I'm stuck for an extra 15 cents, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Now, the president also talked about cutting back foreign imports.
Well, look, let me finish my thought on this productivity thing. See, my sister-in-law owns one of...
Hi, this is Rudolph.
And Irma.
Of the Rudolph and Irma Dance Studios. And if you have a dollar bill...
Any dollar bill...
that's green...
it entitles you to one free dance lesson at...
Rudolph and Irma's Dance Studios, located at 5913 Harper Street in Arverne, Long Island.
And if you don't have a dollar bill...
any Lincoln Head penny will do.
And if you don't happen to be one of the lucky holders of a Lincoln Head penny...
you can show us an empty change purse.
Or an empty wallet.
And still get a free dance lesson, provided you give us a verbal statement of intent that you plan to buy a wallet.
Or a change purse. And that address again is...
Rudolph and Irma's Dance Studios, 5913 Harper Street,
Arverne, Long Island.
Where you learn the breakaway fade, popularized by Henry Armstead, Wizard of the Waxed Floors.
Or perhaps you'll be taken by the conga-monga, the combination of the conga...
and the manga, as taught by Perry Sanchez, the hero of the hardboards, at Rudolph and Irma's Dance Studios in Arverne, Long Island.
And for you older folk who prefer a less lively dance step, chat with us about learning the creek.
A mild dance step made well known by that septuagenarian of slide, Amos Neezer.
And, of course, there are the more popular steps you can learn.
Like the jockey trot.
Or the hot coal hop.
And, of course, the very much in vogue cocktail dip.
It's taught by Felicia Floodgate, the siren of the surfaces.
All this at Rudolph and Irma's Dance Studios in Arverne, Long Island.
Where you'll find dancing a pleasure.
On our deep pile rugs.
And tastefully furnished offices.
And don't forget to ask about our colored rotating chandelier.
Well, now we're in for another nostalgic interlude as we welcome Ralph Flinger to our microphone. Ralph is better known to most of you as Mr. I Know Where They Are. Now, he spent a lifetime tracking down old-time celebrities who are no longer in the spotlight. And Ralph, it's amazing how many of our listeners write in asking your help as they try to locate their favorites of days gone by.
Well, I'm delighted to do whatever I can to help, Ray. You know, I send out more than 100 birthday cards on the average day to washed-up celebrities who've grown a year older. And I know it makes them feel better when I can include a little note that tells them they're still remembered by your listeners.
Well, they certainly are remembered, I'm sure, Ralph. This letter I have here is from a woman in Oregon. Is typical of those that come in addressed to Mr. I Know Where They Are. She says that her girlhood hero was a rich society playboy named Wainbridge Van Cortlandt. But she hasn't read anything about him now in the paper for years, and she wonders whatever became of him.
Oh, goodness sakes alive. Wainbridge Van Cortlandt. His grandfather made millions selling defective railroad ties back in the 19th century when the Iron Horse was first spanning the country.
And tying it together into one great nation, you mean?
Yes, except on the lines where old man Van Cortlandt had provided the railroad ties. The wood in most of them was infested with termites, so that caused the locomotives to tip over before they had a chance to tie this country together into one great nation.
I see. But, of course, Wainbridge Van Cortlandt wasn't responsible for any of that.
No. That swindle of his grandfather's happened long before his time. About the worst thing Wainbridge ever did was ride down Wall Street during the Depression on one of his polo ponies.
Uh-oh.
Several former stock...
Say, friends, have you checked your household fly paper lately to make sure it's retaining its full stickum quality? Even the finest brands tend to dry out after hanging indoors for a few years.
Hi, this is Bob and Ray reminding you that dry fly paper is a useless weapon in your battle against swarming insects. So replace your old dead fly paper today with Einbinders, the brand you've gradually grown to trust over the course of 3 generations. Now we should have a little sports talk. We haven't done that for quite a while.
A little sports music.
Hi, sports fans. This is Biff Burns in the sports room, and today we're welcoming a great hero of the game of baseball, a fellow who's had some 29 years in the sport. He's finally retiring, and I speak, of course, of Stuffy Hodgson. Stuffy, welcome to the sports room. How do you feel?
Well, I feel pretty sad, naturally, Biff, realizing that this is the last day. Pretty sad.
Well, that's a pretty normal way to feel, but still in all, looking back over this long career of yours, you got to admit the game has been pretty good to you.
Well, not as good to me as some of these young punks that are coming along.
Well, I detect a note of rancor there. What do you mean exactly?
Well, when I first came up to the big leagues, playing the game was everything. Sure, you got paid for it, but now all these young guys think about it, big salaries, and big homes, and big cars, and vintage wine, and beautiful women, and making TV commercials, and sleeping late in the morning.
Looks like guys like you went wrong somewhere along the line.
I know, and these young guys, they all have these little radios going in the locker room all the time, playing a bunch of noise. Now, I don't understand that kind of music. Whatever happened to the songs that Pat Boone and Kate Smith sang? I mean, those guys sang real songs.
I guess so. I don't know much about music.
And here they're always kidding around. Now, they loosen the spikes on my shoes, you know? So I run wobbly.
Oh, that's right.
And they put cheese up here in the band of my cap.
Wow.
It took me till August to track that smell down.
That's that. Today, we announce Bob and Ray final clearance, a closeout, absolute clearance sale.
We are being forced to vacate our premises. Our lease has been foreclosed.
Our landlord says we must go, and his ultimatum is your good luck.
Now, we have to get rid of every last piece of our tremendous stock at ridiculous sacrifice.
Now, because we must go, you can buy men's 2-pant suits for $16.50. Men's 3-pant suits for $17.50. And men's 4-pant suits for $18.59.
And men's all-pant suits for $19.50. Now, you can get men's complete winter overcoats at $22.50 and men's winter overcoats without sleeves for $17.50.
Our lease is up, and you get the benefit. Men's winter underwear with long legs and long sleeves for $1.75. An extra pair of legs for only 38 cents.
Yes, the landlord says vacate, and that's it. What? Excuse me.
Us?
Hello? Yes. What? We can? Darn it.
What's the matter?
The landlord says we can stay another year.
And welcome now to The Big Scoop, the program that pays tribute to the outstanding accomplishments of the nation's working newspapermen. And here at our news desk, prepared to tell you about this week's Big Scoop Award, is our Big Scoop editor, Big Fred Scoop.
Thank you, Norman, and welcome to The Big Scoop. Now, this week's handsome award, suitable for framing, together with a certified check for $15, goes to Millard L. Peavy, the crime reporter for the Kenosha, Wisconsin Star-Tribune and Morning Throwaway. It was only a little more than a year ago, on March 14, 1981, that Millard Peavy's career took a sudden turn when he was called into the office of his managing editor.
Peavy, I've been wanting to speak to you personally because I plan to clean out some dead wood around this office. Naturally, you'll be the first to get the old heave-ho. Unless you can explain what you've been doing the past few weeks. You haven't written a story for this paper since you covered the Eastern Star rummage sale on Lincoln's birthday. What have you been goofing off over since then?
Well, actually, Chief, I've been working night and day on the story that could become my big scoop. You remember Big Daddy Gumbert, the guy who was sentenced to life in 1971 for hijacking a truckload of peach cobbler and killing the driver? Well, I'm convinced he didn't do it, Chief. And I'm out to prove that an innocent man is rotting in prison.
Well, I can't believe you're serious, Peavy. I remember the Gumbert case very well. The police found bits of stewed peaches on his shoes. Besides that, he dropped his driver's license and 5 credit cards in the cab of the hijacked truck when he abandoned it.
Now, welcome once again to Gary Summit and its continuing story of intrigue among the socially prominent. There in stately splendor, far removed from the squalid village below, they fight their petty battles over power and money. Now, as this week's action begins, young Rodney Murchfield is counting paper clips in his palatial office at the Murchfield Lead Mining Company. And suddenly, his evil brother Caldwell enters. Rodney speaks.
527, 528, 529.
I don't know whether you've heard about it yet, Rodney, but Mother just made me vice president of the family business. Where shall I put my golf clubs?
I really don't care. And I might add, the very idea of your being an officer of this firm fills me with disgust. 548, 549.
Well, I'm not too crazy about having you here either, but since you're president of the outfit, I'll try to make the best of it.
You're missing the point, Caldwell. My whole life has been dedicated to Murchfield lead mining. Lead is in my blood. Now you've suddenly appeared as my long-lost brother, and I don't see that 30 years of being long-lost qualifies you for an executive position.
Excuse me, would either of you care for some coffee?
Not now, Pamela. I'm in conference and can't be disturbed.
Yes, sir.
586, 587, 588.
Gee, I hope she comes back. I sure would have liked some coffee. Besides, I could tell she was giving me the big eye.
Caldwell, that young lady's in love with me, and I'm planning to leave my wife to marry her. Say, here's good news for you homemakers. You're well aware, I'm sure, that extra shiny steel ingots have been in short supply this season at your Monongahela Metal Foundry showroom. But now, we're happy to say that supply has nearly caught up with the tremendous demand.
You may still encounter a limit of 3 ingots to the customer in some scattered areas. But in most places, your Monongahela agent will be happy to sell you as many as you need to replace those old worn-out ingots you've been forced to use during the shortage. So stock up today while there's a good selection.
Well, with that, hardly seems possible. I think time is just about up for this one, huh?
Yeah, it looks like it has. We got to go. We should remind you all, though, that the Bob and Ray Public Radio Show was developed and produced for the Radio Foundation by Larry Josephson, who has known the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat. And he can't decide which he likes best.
The associate producer is Marjorie Van Halderen, who's had it up to here with Frank Sinatra records.
And Mr. Music is Stan Free. Audio engineer Mike Moran.
Funding in part from the National Endowment for the Arts and the New York State Council on the Arts.
Now, this is Ray Goulding reminding you to write if you get work.
Bob Elliott wanting you to hang by your thumbs.
This program was independently produced by the Radio Foundation.
And now, from approximately coast to coast, it's the Bob and Ray Public Radio Show. Okay, and today we've had our scouts searching the railroad and bus stations around New York for victims of misfortune. And several of them here have been selected to receive assistance from our generous Bob and Ray organization. Bob, I see you have one of those miserable creatures there at the microphone with you right now.
Yeah, I do, Ray. This pathetic specimen is E.L. Werberly of Niles, Michigan, if I read that correctly.
Yes, Niles, Michigan.
And you state that you came to New York for treatment of a rare illness, is that right?
Yes, that's right. See, my hair began falling out about 2 months ago, and the diagnosis has now been confirmed that I've got Dutch elm disease.
Well, I'm told that's quite unusual among humans and would be hard to treat in a community as small as Niles, Michigan.
Well, we've got a tree surgeon there, but all he could suggest was sawing off a few of my limbs to see if the condition would clear up. Of course, I'd prefer not to have that done.
Well, don't you think it might be better than going around with that forestry department sign nailed to your shirt?
Well, I'm beginning to think it might. I'm not contagious to humans. But here in New York, the rare disease specialists all seem to have their offices close to Central Park.
Yes, they do.
And the police won't let me go into the neighborhood because I might kill the trees.
Well, you've certainly become one of society's outcasts, and to cheer you up, our generous Bob and Ray organization wants you to have this fine 3-speed hairdryer. Use it in good health, sir.
Are you trying to be funny?
No.
I mean, my condition has let me bald as an egg, and you give me a hairdryer.
Just use it in good health. That's least we can do. Our final And now the Rotman Corporation, maker of fine buggy whips for more than 9 centuries, brings you The Orderlies, a dramatic behind-the-scenes glimpse of life in a big city hospital.
Orderly wine coop, report at once to Chief Orderly Snellwell. Report to Chief Orderly Snellwell.
Here I am, Chief Orderly Snellwell. I hope being summoned to your executive cubicle doesn't mean that I've somehow incurred your displeasure.
Wine coop, I think you're well aware that the mere sight of you incurs my displeasure. However, I try not to let personal feelings interfere with my administrative duties here in the big city hospital.
Oh, you administrate beautifully, sir, considering the awful cross you have to bear with people like me making you nauseated all the time.
It's not people like you, Wine Coop. It's you specifically.
Yes, Your Eminence. And I sure didn't mean to imply that anybody else on the staff even comes close to creating disgust the way I do.
All right, Wine Cube, you can stop polishing my shoes with the tip of your nose. I think you've made your groveling attitude quite clear now.
Well, it was only meant as a gesture of devotion, Chief Orderly Snellwell, but if it bugs you, I'll gladly return to my menial duties.
Not so fast, Wine Coop. There's still the matter of a very serious charge that one of my informants has brought against you.
Really, sir? I thought those finks were all on vacation this week.
That'll be quite enough of your insolence, Wine Coop. It'll only make things worse for you. Now, would you care to confirm or deny the report that you let a hospital visitor ride on one of the elevators that was clearly marked for staff use only.
Well, yeah, I think I did, but as you know, sir, we only have 4 elevators, and they're all marked for staff use only.
Now, let me pass on a timely shopping reminder from the makers of Einbinder flypaper. Friends, I'm sure you're all aware of the worldwide shortage of high-quality stickum that's used in the manufacture of flypaper. Prices have been skyrocketing by the embargo on glue from Cuba, the banning of exports from the Philippines, and the failure of this year's crop in Poland. And now that you're being urged to help fight inflation by limiting your purchases of flypaper, and you'll want to be sure you're getting the very best. So always ask for genuine Einbinder flypaper, the brand you've gradually grown to trust over the course of 3 generations. Buy a small amount today. Several weeks ago, we designated East Padua, Montana as a Bob and Ray Honor City, and today we learned that the mayor of East Padua is in town, and we invited him here to chat with us and tell us what's happened since the city received that high honor. Welcome to our microphones, Mayor Ferdy Grosvenor.
Hello, Mr. Goulding.
Mayor Grosvenor, tell us what happened the day we named East Padua our honor city.
Well, there was a sign hung over the street that said, "Welcome to East Pardue, home of grated cheese." So we took her down right after we was named an honor city, and we had Luella Banks sew in a caret mark before the word home. Then she sewed in the word honored on the bias.
Making it read, "Welcome to East Padua, honored home of grated cheese."
Right. But it looked kind of makeshift, so we took it down and burned it.
I see.
There was a lot of cutting up the day of the honor, though. Doc Markwell, the druggist, filled a lot of prescriptions wrong. Jay Fitzer, the mechanic, went crazy with his grease gun, and he really had
Well, have any changes taken place, Mayor Grosvenor?
Yes, because of the publicity East Pardue got when it was named Honor City, a lot of industry was attracted to the area.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure it will herald a new era of unparalleled prosperity in East Pardue.
Yes, sir. 3 days after we got the honor, men and equipment came to East Pardue. Bulldozers were going day and night, power shovels operating on double shifts.
Well, I'm certainly glad there was so much activity.
It took them about 4 days to push East Pardue right off the map.
You mean East Pardue is gone, Mr. Mayor?
That's right. It was pushed in a big jumble, a heap, you might say. In the interest of good broadcasting, we have a reply to a recent Bob and Ray editorial in which we expressed the view that the New York City area law requiring leashes for dogs should be broadened to include cats, hamsters, and other pets. And here now to speak in response is Mr. Victor J. Bodenhamer of the National Society of Friends of the Four-Legged. Go right ahead, Mr. Bodenhamer.
Well, I certainly intend to. The attitude shown by you two birds toward my presence here today has been a humiliating experience.
Well, I'm sorry you feel that way, sir. Actually, we were just discussing our general reaction toward listeners who come here to present editorial rebuttals. And, of course, nothing we said was meant as a personal reflection on you.
What are you talking about? Your pal Fatso there called me a little shrimp. Now, that's about as personal as you can get, and I don't like it one bit.
I can understand that, but by the same token, you just referred to Ray as Fatso, and he has a legion of friends who only think of him as heavy-set.
Yeah? Well, I got a legion of friends who only think of me as being petite or diminutive, but never a little shrimp.
Well, I'm sure you can
Well,
overlook...
excuse me, but if you'll allow me to finish making my point here.
All right.
I'm only 5 feet 2.
Right.
But I'm very well proportioned, so that my small stature isn't even noticed unless I'm standing next to a normal person.
I hope you're not saying that you think of yourself as being abnormal just because of your diminutive stature.
No, not at all. That was just a Freudian slip. You see, I admit that I took quite a pushing around as a child because I was small, but now that I'm an adult, I have a legion of friends, as I mentioned a moment ago. Of course, you may not believe that.
No, I believe it. You seem like a decent enough person to me, and I
Thank
know...
you. And now we journey again to Gary Summit and its unfolding story of intrigue among the socially prominent. There in stately splendor, far removed from the squalid village below, they fight their petty battles over power and money. As our action begins, spineless young Rodney Murchfield is at his desk, making plans to regain Pamela's affections from his brother Caldwell. Suddenly, he's interrupted by the entrance of Wallace Jodenfuhr, the chief engineer of the Murchfield Lead Mining Company. Rodney glances up and speaks.
Come in and sit down, Jodenfuhr. I was just planning how I might regain Pamela's affections from my despised brother Caldwell.
Well, I'm afraid I can't help you with that, Mr. Murchfield. I'm a mining engineer. I didn't even take a course in personal relations at A&M.
Well, that's all right. I have other people on my payroll who can take care of Pamela. It's been your assignment to figure out why we've had so many customer complaints recently at Murchfield Lead.
Well, I've had the quality control department working on that problem day and night, Mr. M. They brought me some wonderful news.
Well, I don't see anything wonderful about delivering lead ingots that our customers can't melt down into satisfactory toy soldiers. Even the fishing sinkers made from our product don't sink right anymore.
Well, that's what I had the guys in quality control check out.
Oh?
And their study led to the wonderful news. It seems our recent lead shipments were unsatisfactory because they weren't lead. What we've been mining lately is pure silver.
Are you saying that our underground division moved from lead into a vein of silver without knowing it?
That's what happened, all right. It's so dark down there. Well, now we invite you to join us again for the Bob and Ray Public Service feature, Chatting with Dr. Chesney. Now, this is the portion of the program where we invite all of our disturbed listeners to call in and receive some expert advice from the noted psychologist, Dr. Merton Chesney. And, Doctor, I can't tell you how happy we are to have you with us again.
Really? I find it interesting that you claim to be happy when you're not exhibiting any of the usual outward signs of joy. Would you care to think about that for a moment?
Well, I don't really need to think about it. When I said I was happy to have you here, it was no big deal. I just said it to try to make you feel welcome.
Well, I assumed as much. And do you know how the rage builds up inside every time you say something just to please another person?
I assure you there's no rage building up inside me, Doctor. Now, if we could just move along
You're clenching your fists and your face is flushed. I'm afraid those are clear signs of suppressed anger.
Hey, knock it off, will you? Take the first call.
All right. If you don't want to become a well-adjusted person, that's your business. I'll just pick up line one here. Hello, you're on the air with Dr. Chesney.
Hello? I live in a large city in Pennsylvania, and I'm afraid that I could go out and shop in my neighborhood store.
Oh, yes, that's agoraphobia.
No, it's Pittsburgh. Well, I had the same problem when I lived in Cincinnati, so I don't think that's the cause of it.
No, I'm sure it's a fear that follows you wherever you go. And I suppose this feeling you get in stores is a panic that you may faint or even have a seizure.
Well, it's panic, all right, but not like that.
Well, suppose you describe exactly what happens, no matter how bizarre it may sound.
Well, see, I'll be pushing my cart down an aisle, perfectly natural, stuffing things in my... And now, Dining Out with Bob and Ray, the informative feature that helps guide you to some of the lesser-known but truly outstanding gourmet restaurants around New York and around the world. Well, Bob, I believe your adventure in dining this week took you to one of those quaint little sidewalk cafes up in the Central Park area.
Yes, it did, Ray. I'd heard a great deal about the specialties at Bernie's Pushcart on the Green. And I finally was fortunate enough to locate it the other day as it was moving north near 85th Street.
Well, I assume then from what you're saying that Bernie's Pushcart on the Green doesn't stay in one location the way most restaurants do.
No, I think it's unique among gourmet restaurants in that one respect. Bernie, my dining host, told me that he ranges from Central Park south clear up to the mid-'80s, but his regular clientele is familiar with his route, so they plan their lunch hours for times when they know he'll be in the neighborhood.
Well, moving around as he does, I don't imagine that Bernie's able to provide too much in the way of atmosphere or that impeccable table service that we associate with many of the finer restaurants.
No, as the name implies, Bernie's Pushcart on the Green is just a pushcart on the green, but I would say that the wide range of offerings from the menu more than makes up for the lack of atmosphere and service. I had the number 2 combination. That's a hot dog with pickle relish. Bernie also offers his famous hot dog with mustard, hot dog with ketchup, or hot dog Chateaubriand. That's served for two with sauerkraut.
Well, I suppose you can also get a plain hot dog with nothing on it if you prefer.
No, I don't think you can. But with all the succulent relishes offered by Bertie, I don't imagine the absence of a plain hot dog from the menu will bother anybody. Only word of caution I might offer is that it's still a little too early in the... Well, if we had an old clock on the wall, I think it would be telling us that we've got to get out of here for this meeting of the Bob and Ray Public Radio Show.
It was produced for the Radio Foundation by Larry Josephson, who's not at all sure an educated consumer is his best customer.
Marjorie Van Halderen was associate producer, technical director Malcolm Addy, music by Paul Taubman, who takes requests but hates it when they ask for valse chinoise.
Sound effects were by Al Schaefer, who stubbornly believes that butter is what they put on movie theater popcorn.
Engineers were Mike Moran and Joe Lopes, production assistants Diana Freed and Stuart Zagnett.
Funding for the program by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Through NPR's Satellite Program Development Fund.
And now this is Ray Goulding reminding you to write if you get work.
Bob Elliott reminding you to hang by your thumb.
For a free picture of Bob and Ray, send a stamped, self-addressed envelope to Bob and Ray Picture, Box 5000, GPO, New York 10116. That's Bob and Ray Picture, Box 5000, GPO, New York 10116. This program was independently produced by the Radio Foundation.
Now, from approximately coast to coast, Bob Elliott and Ray Goulding present the Bob and Ray Public Radio Program.
Well, welcome again. And we've got two important items on the agenda today. The first is in the nature of a public service announcement.
Well, it's a message from the elephant keepers at the Bronx Zoo here in New York, and we're happy to cooperate. It's been brought to the attention of these keepers that certain citizens have been exploiting their elephants.
Well, you know, these elephants are supported at the zoo for the edification of the taxpayers of New York City, as well as guests from out of town.
And the officials of the Zoological Society take a dim view of certain promotion-minded characters who've been painting advertising slogans on these elephants. For example, subscribe to the Casserly Memory Course and remember like me.
Or let the Keene Express Company handle your trunks.
Now, these mercenary efforts are distasteful to all of us, and we ask your cooperation in helping to stamp out the practice. Well, you know, it's special guest time now. Every once in a while, we chat with people, you know, who look like famous personalities. And today our scouts uncovered a Mr. Charles Mumford, who looks exactly like Ralph Bellamy, a famous star of stage and screen. Hello, Mr. Mumford.
Hello there, Mr. Goulding.
You know, it's fantastic. You do bear a remarkable resemblance to Ralph Bellamy.
Well, thanks for the compliment, Mr. Goulding. People began to notice the resemblance just about the time Sunrise at Campobello came out.
Gosh, that's a long time ago. Are you about the same height as Ralph Bellamy, Mr. Mumford?
I'm about 7 inches shorter than he is. I once measured myself against a cardboard cutout of him in a movie house lobby.
And you found out that you were 7 inches shorter?
I had to estimate that because the cardboard cutout depicted him as a commando landing on foreign soil, and he was crouching over. But 7 inches shorter is about right, yes.
And even with the height differential, people still take you for Ralph Bellamy, right?
That's right. I can't walk down the street without having someone yell, "Hello there, Ralph Bellamy."
And what do you do when they say that?
Well, I acknowledge the greeting with a nod, and sometimes I take the pipe out of my mouth and favor the greeter with a smile.
And I suppose they comment on what a surprise it is to run into you.
Yes, I get that all the time. People seem to enjoy talking to famous personalities.
Well, now, when people stop you on the street, Mr. Mumford, what questions do they generally ask you?
Well, when the weather's cold, most of them say, "Why put up with this cold weather, Ralph? Why don't you go back to the warmer California climes?"
Say, here's good news for the busy gift shopper. Do you have trouble selecting just the right present for Christmas, birthdays, and other special occasions? Then why not offer the token of love and esteem that's welcomed by all? A gift certificate for iron-binder flypaper. No. They're available in denominations of $10, $50, and $100.
And they can be redeemed for whichever size and style of flypaper best suits the needs of the recipient. Friends will love you for your thoughtfulness, and they'll also admire your good taste in selecting a gift certificate for genuine Einbinder flypaper, the brand you've gradually grown to trust over the course of 3 generations.
Say, once again, our scouts have been searching the railroad and bus terminals for victims of hard luck who need a helping hand from our generous Bob and Ray organization. Bob, I assume that gentleman there beside you is today's first knucklehead who's gotten himself into a jam.
Yeah, well, I think we'll think of him more as a tragic victim of fate once we've heard his story, Ray. His name is Merton Harmerdoit, and he's from Newton, Kansas. Mr. Harmerdoit, I understand you're trying to raise money to get to Europe because you can't find a job in your line of work back in Kansas. What is your occupation, sir?
I'm a fool.
You could be one of those almost anywhere, couldn't you?
Well, not if you expect to get paid for it. You see, I'm not just a civilian who acts foolish.
No.
I'm a professional fool. I wear those little shoes that curl up at the toes. I have a cap with bells on it. And I do handsprings to amuse the royal family. All that sort of thing.
So, when you're really a modern-day version of the old court jester, I guess.
Well, the modern-day version is pretty much like court jesters have always been. But, of course, the big problem is that there are no royal families for us to amuse in this country.
Well, do you think they still have court jesters in Europe?
Well, I don't know for sure, but that seems like the best place for me to give it a whirl. See, nobody in this country will keep my job application on file when I tell them that I'm a fool.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only kind of work I'm trained for, see?
Well, it's tragic to hear that the recession may be over for some, but it lingers on for you, sir. But our Bob and Ray organization stands by to help, and here just for you is this sturdy home safe to keep your valuables in. It's from the Lockport.
And now welcome to Gary Summit and its unfolding story of intrigue among the socially prominent. There in stately splendor, far removed from the squalid village below, they fight their endless battles over power and money. And as our action begins, young Rodney Murchfield is entering the quaint shop on Main Street, operated by Big Emil Demke, one of the leading hitmen in the village.
Yoo-hoo, anybody here?
I'll be right with you. I'm just finishing a little job out here in the back.
Oh.
Yes, sir. May I be of assistance?
Yes, I have a family problem I hope you can help me with. You see, a man claiming to be my long-lost brother has turned up, and since a large inheritance could be involved eventually...
Well, I understand. We have a full line of services that we offer to take care of such things. You want it to look like an accident, or will any kind of cheap, messy job be okay?
Well, I thought maybe you'd have a catalog I could look through.
Of course. They're all over in that rack there against the far wall. Simple pommelings are on the left, and up to the permanent stuff there.
Okay.
Just browse around. I'll be with you in a second. Hello. Big Emil's Disposal Service. Big Emil speaking.
Hello, my name's Spanky Murchfield, and I'm calling long distance from a large western city.
Los Angeles?
No, Fresno. To a child of 12, this seems like a large city. However, that has nothing to do with what I'm calling about. You see, I'm the son that Caldwell Murchfield never wanted, which makes me Rodney Murchfield's nephew by a previous marriage.
I didn't know Rodney was married previously.
He wasn't. I'm his nephew by Caldwell's previous marriage. And now, here is the news you've all been waiting for from the Monongahela Metal Foundry. We've got a winner in our big, giant sweepstakes contest to select a trade name for Monongahela's new number 4 size steel ingot.
And And our lucky first prize contestant is Mr. Elroy K. Depew of Rural Route Number 1 in Carthage, Missouri.
Wonderful. And our congratulations. Congratulations to you, Mr. Depew.
And the winning name, suggested by Mr. Depew, was Alfred. Congratulations again to you, sir. And your fortune and prizes will be on its way the first thing tomorrow morning. Now let's join Mr. District Defender, champion of the week and the helpless.
I am the city's district defender. It's my job to defend the weak and the helpless as they come into daily contact with the parasites of society that lurk around us all. Any decent person could easily fall victim to the con man, the grifter, the hoaxer. All I can do is stand ready to wage war against evil from my office high atop the old Van Brewster building. It was there that my latest heartbreaking case began.
Now, wait a minute, Harold. Don't go trotting around like a chicken with its head cut off. I'll bet maybe this nice-looking young man could help us.
I'm sure I could, dear lady. You and this man, whom I judge to be your husband, look like natural targets of the con man, the grifter, the hoaxer. Sit down and tell me all about it.
Well, I really don't know whether we ought to take up your time. As I was telling Martha on the way down here, there are some winners in life and some born losers, so maybe we ought to just write off the whole thing and forget it.
I can appreciate how you feel, sir. Nobody likes to admit he's been a gullible fool, but as the district defender, I'm here to help, so tell us your story from the beginning.
Well, Harold's been a gullible fool, Mr. District Defender.
Yes, I'm sure he was, but I'd already guessed that myself, so suppose you go back and tell me your story from the beginning.
Well, see, Harold and I operate a small Greasy Spoon restaurant on the outskirts of the city. It's what they call a mom-and-pop establishment, even though we have no children of our own.
Yeah. I get the picture, and a tragic one it is. Decent people like yourselves are easy marks for the con man, the hoaxer, the grifter. So please go on.
Well, about a week ago, a man came in and he asked if he could get change for a $10 bill to use the telephone.
How tragically familiar this all sounds. The old change a big bill to... And I think we have time to welcome an old friend of ours. He's a writer, a traveler, a gourmand, and best of all, a storyteller. We know him by his dapper little trademark, a pencil-thin mustache. Would you all welcome Martin LeSueur, ladies and gentlemen. Martin?
Oh, thank you.
Maybe you could tell us how that happened.
You mean my dapper little trademark?
Uh-huh.
Well, I wasn't thinking while I was shaving this morning, and half my trademark went on the floor.
Uh-huh.
But I called my doctor, and he said it'll grow in 2 weeks or so. Not to worry about.
That's good to hear. What we want to get to is some of those stories that you're so famous for, the stories
Sure.
that you've wrote and told so often.
Well,
Can you
when
give
I
us...
first started in this business, I was a cub reporter on the old St. Paul Ledger-Dispatch, Eagle Tribune, Courier-Citizen, Morning Ledger, Daily Item.
That was a famous merger, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Well, I was in a city room there one day, and the phone rang, and I heard the city editor talking to somebody. It seems that there was a man hanging from the 15th floor of the Vaseline building
Oh, wow.
over on Walnut Street. So I said to the editor, I said, could I go over and cover that story?
This would be a big break for you in the newspaper game.
Well, I don't know. So he says, go on over. He said, cover it. Take public transportation.
What was that? Do you remember the time?
Trolley car.
All right. So you got over there. Is he
You
still
know,
hanging
about
up
15 minutes later, there's a big crowd out there. There's policemen, firemen with nets and everything. And I said, look, well, I guess we got to be on our way now. Bob, thanks for being with us here at the old Bob and Ray Public Radio program. It was developed and produced for the Radio Foundation by Larry Josephson, who's living proof that travel is broadening.
And our associate producer is Marjorie Van Halderen.
Stan Free was at the organ, and our audio engineer was Joe Lopes.
Funding in part from the National Endowment for the Arts.
and the New York State Council on the Art. And now this is Ray Goulding saying, right if you get work.
Bob Elliott reminding you to hang by your thumbs.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for
Oh,
coming.
you've been very kind. Thank you very much. Thank you.
This program was independently produced by the Radio Foundation.
And now, from approximately coast to coast, Bob Elliott and Ray Goulding take pleasure in presenting the Bob and Ray Public Radio Program.
Thank you. Mary Magoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, it's such a joy
Here. And
to be here, Ray.
Mary has, I'm Bob.
Bob, I always get you two confused.
Right, and
I can never get you straight.
Webley Webster is here. He
Hello
usually handles
there.
our book reviews and things like that.
How are you, Bob?
I'm just fine, Webb, and it's good to see you again.
Well,
You're
it's
looking
a joy to be here, too.
chipper and
It's a pretty fancy studio. I've never seen one like this with all the curtains and the
know.
parquet floors.
expensive parquet floor.
Yeah?
It was put in just for this show, we're told.
Is that why?
Yeah.
That's something.
And Wally Blue is back there in the green room. He'll be reporting in a little bit later. Who else do we have? Well, we have sponsors. We have some subscribers.
On public radio, we have
Yes,
sponsors.
we do, and these we've carried over from the old days, and we want to thank them. Einbinder, the greatest name in flypaper, is going to help us. This year, more than ever before, make flypaper an important part of your life.
And the Monongahela Metal Foundry, too, maker of shiny steel ingots. Monongahela, the metal foundry that casts its ingots with the housewife in mind.
Keep that in mind. We have that report from Mr. Ballou, I'm told right
Okay?
now.
Yes, this is the birthday of, I don't know if you know this, of Fabian Sturdley. Now, he was born in 1868 in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And our correspondent, Wally Ballou, is standing by with a report on what's happening at the birthplace of this famous American. He's at Sturdley House, and it's a great tourist attraction, we're told. So come in, please, Wally Ballou.
Lee Ballou at Driftwood, the stately old mansion where Fabian Sturdley was born, and I'm talking with his grandson, Van Tassel Sturdley, who manages this museum out here.
Well, thank you, Mr. Ballou.
Is it true that the house has been restored to the original rundown condition it was in old Mr. Sturdley's time?
Yes, they were going to tear down this grand old salt box to make way for a combination car wash and bowling alley. But a group of public-spirited relatives banded together and have managed to save it and have it declared a public shrine with no taxes to pay.
I understand, I know that Fabian Sturdley, who he was and everything, there may be some, especially children, who don't. Could you tell us something about your grandfather?
Well, I'd say the big thing about him was eccentricity. For instance, he had electric lights in this house as far back as 1912, but because the neighbors laughed at him, he had them all taken out.
Replacing them with kerosene lamps, as the story goes. He took part in the Spanish-American War, I believe.
Yes?
And upon his return, he opened a putty shop here.
Yes. He was so impressed with the usefulness of puttees, so convinced that civilians would want them for walking in tall grass, that he put all his money into his shop here, calling it the House of Puttees.
And I think it was in this very same room that he...
Well, once again, it's time for Grand Motel, a speck of a place, a heck of a place on Route 14 near Hadleyville, where the mountains reach the sky and living as easy as pie. In today's episode, our action begins with uncompromising owner Leonard Humphrey directing a newly arrived guest to his suite in Grand Motel.
Hell, I'm putting you in Unit 5, mister. Just park your machine over under that sycamore and you won't have far to carry your luggage.
Well, I don't usually have to carry my own stuff in other places where I stay, Mr. What's your name, anyway?
Humphrey, Leonard Humphrey.
Well, I guess that's okay. But as I was telling you, Humphrey, Leonard Humphrey, I don't usually...
No, my name is just Leonard Humphrey. There's only one Humphrey in it.
Well, then, I don't know why you told me there were two. Well, anyway, if you'll stop interrupting me there for a minute, I wanted to say that other motel owners unpacked my car for me and carried the suitcases into the room.
Well, I guess I could do that. We sure can't afford to lose your business.
Well, fine. Come on, I'll open the car trunk for you.
All right.
I got quite a few sample cases in there I want you to carry to the room.
Plus, if you'd park your machine over under that sycamore, it wouldn't be so far to carry things.
No, that's okay. I don't mind.
There's sure a lot of luggage there. It's really got the back of your car weighted down. What kind of samples do you carry with you?
I sell bricks. Naturally, I have to carry several styles of your natural red building brick, your round cornered paving. Say, folks, here's a valuable shopping tip from another of our sponsors, the makers of Einbinder flypaper. Friends, did you know that the giant economy size of Einbinders contains almost 3 times as much flypaper as the standard household package? Yet it costs only 50% more? Now, if you live in a large house or in a section of the country where swarms of flies are extremely dense, it'll pay you to buy in quantity. But wise shoppers don't neglect quality either. That's why the brand to ask for is Einbinders, the flypaper you've gradually grown to trust over the course of 3 generations. So get some today. Well, thank you, Stan. We pride ourselves on our interesting guest, and I think we have a great one here with us now. He's one of the world's most outstanding memory experts. His name is the great, what was that again?
My name is Hubert R. Gruber, Ray.
Well, I thought you were known professionally as the great something or other.
No, I used to be billed as the Great Blotto, but I'm off the stuff now. So
Oh, I see. Well, I know that many of our listeners will remember your act from vaudeville days, and I'm sure they'd be interested in knowing, what you're doing now.
Well, I offer my services now to business and industry. I give courses in memory training to their young executives.
Well, that sounds like fascinating work.
Well, you run across a lot of meatheads, but generally I can teach the young businessman to remember the names of people he's introduced to, and that's what's important.
All right, well, could you give us an example of how you do that?
Yes. Suppose you're introduced to a man named Fordyce.
Yeah?
Well, you form a mental picture of 4 dice. And by always associating that image with the man, you never forget his name.
I see. Well, I see. How would that system work with me now? My name is Goulding, see?
Well, let's assume your name was Ramshot. You'd form a mental picture of a hunter shooting a ram, and you'd remember the name that way.
Well, what about my partner, Bob Elliott? How would it work with him?
Well, suppose his name was Richmond. You'd form the image of a man surrounded by a lot of money.
Well, in other words, pal, your system doesn't work with names like ours,
Well,
right?
yes, it does. That's in the advanced training, and I don't want to get into that on the air. Welcome again to Garish Summit and its endless story of intrigue among the socially prominent. There, in stately splendor, far removed from the squalid village below, the beautiful people fight their petty battles over power and money. As our action begins, strong-willed Agatha Murchfield is in the solarium awaiting the arrival of her lawyer, Bowden Pardue.
Oh, is that you, Bowden?
Yes, I seem to be somewhere in the entry hall, Agatha. Can you talk me in from here?
All right. Just hang a right through the music room and then cut across the west edge of the library until you get to the solarium. You can't miss it.
Very well. I'm on my way.
Oh, there you are, Bowden. Oops. It's been ages.
Yes, it has, Agatha, but that's only because the carpet cleaners had the library blocked and I had to double clear back through the dining room. I must say you're looking well, except that you seem drawn and haggard. As if you haven't slept in days.
Well, say, here's a tip for you homemakers from the Monongahela Metal Foundry. Ladies, we all know how frustrating it is to spend a whole day polishing steel ingots around the house and still have them looking dull and lifeless. But don't blame your ingot polish for failing to do the job.
The simple fact is that many steel mills don't even try to beautify their products for use as home decorations, but not so at Monongahela, the metal foundry that casts its ingots with the housewife in mind. So why not drive your heavy-duty truck to a conveniently located Monongahela showroom today and stock up on those shiny ingots you've always wanted. You'll be glad you did.
Say, it's good to see you, Kent Lyle-Birdley. This is our
Well,
old-time
thank you.
announcer who's been with us for all these years.
Thank you
What's
very
new and
much,
exciting?
Ray. Well, not very much. I've just been waiting for you to get another program on the radio. I haven't been announcing for a while.
That tuxedo you're wearing, has to be at least 40 years old.
Yes, this goes back to the American album of familiar music when I was almost the announcer on that show.
You didn't quite get that job, though, as I recall.
No, they called me in from Pittsburgh, and I got here. They said Andre Baruch was sick. Would I come right in and announce the program? It would be my big break.
I think folks remember him as the announcer on Tea Time Tunes. That was your big show, wasn't it?
That was what I was doing in Pittsburgh, yes.
And, then you had hits and encores
Yes,
for a while.
but when I got the American album, that was the big deal.
Well,
I
it's
got
good to
here
see
and
you,
Andre
Kent.
Baruch got well, and I never did it.
That's right. Well, it's good to see you, Kent. It's
Thank
always
you.
a joy to have you walk by and bring back some great memories of yesteryear.
Yeah, stumble out,
Right.
Kent. Right now, I'd like to preview a new feature that we'll be doing on these shows called Views, Behind the People, Behind the News. It's a chance to discuss controversial issues of the day with well-known experts in the field.
We do want to have it understood, however, that the opinions expressed by our guests are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of the Bob and Ray organization.
Also, they should not be construed as the opinions of this station or its subscribers or members of their families.
And it must also be remembered that questions asked by the panel are not designed to reflect any particular viewpoint.
We should mention, too, that our panel members are speaking only for themselves and not as representatives of their employers or members of their families.
But in any event, this program is presented solely for the enjoyment of our viewing and listening audience, and any rebroadcast or reuse without specific permission is prohibited.
Likewise, any admission charged by owners of radio sets for listening to this broadcast is similarly prohibited.
The entire contents of this program remain the sole property of the Bob and Ray organization and may not be used for any commercial purpose by the New York Jets or the Commissioner of the National Football League.
That includes reproduction in whole or in part, Ray.
Absolutely, Bob. However, it should be understood that portions of this program may have been recorded earlier for broadcast in this time period.
Now, this is done solely for the convenience of our audience and not for the purpose of editing or deleting controversial material.
In so doing, some passages that have been retained may be considered offensive by various ethnic groups or religious organizations.
Therefore, discretion is urged among members of such groups or organizations in listening to the material presented.
Parental guidance is also suggested, and
I think I see some old friends of ours, the handsomely uniformed Bob and Ray Guards.
Oh, the beautifully caparisoned guards come down, marching down the hall here to lock our studio door at the conclusion of each broadcast. I think I can hear them coming.
Here they come.
Here they come.
This is a ritual we've gone through for years. I don't know how many people.
35
remember.
years.
They come
These
in
guards
and
have been closing the door.
what they do is hand over the keys, making sure.
If you're ever in New York, try to get here to witness this ceremony.
Well, we don't have tickets for it, but now they're almost ready for the actual locking of the door.
Well,
Always scares us when we hear that. Here it
Who comes there? He. Who's king? Us, king.
This is it.
And all's well. Escort the keys by the center.
the keys are now have been passed off, and the studio door is finally closed and locked for another week. Now, as much as we dislike to do it, we've got to call a halt to all this frivolity and wrap up this edition of the Bob and Ray Public Radio Program.
It was developed and produced for the Radio Foundation by Larry Josephson.
Script coordinator was Carl J. Fat Chans.
Associate producer Marjorie Van Halteren. Music by Stan Free.
Additional dialogue by Chester Hasbrook Frisbee.
Our audio engineer is Mike Moran, and funding in part is from the National Endowment for the Arts and the New York State Council on the Arts.
Now, this is Ray Goulding reminding you to write if you get work.
Bob Elliott reminding you to hang by your thumbs.
For a free picture of Bob and Ray, send a stamped, self-addressed envelope to Bob and Ray Picture, Box 5000, GPO, New York 10116. That's Bob and Ray Picture, Box 5000, GPO, New York 10116. This program was independently produced by the Radio Foundation.
And now, from approximately coast to coast, it's the Bob and Ray Public Radio Show. Well, you know, it's about time for one of the fun weeks to take place. Now,
Which one is this?
Well, we'll be observing National Peanut Week. And in connection with that event, reporter Wally Ballou is standing by near Jacksonville, Florida, to bring us a special report. So come in, please, Wally Ballou.
This is the golden voice of Wally Ballou speaking from just south of Jacksonville, Florida. Beside me, pushing a peanut along the highway with his nose, is Mr. Pontius Whittier of the National Association of Peanut Roasters. Mr. Whittier, I assume this stunt you're engaged in is designed to get publicity for National Peanut Week?
Well, that's right. Almost every town I push the peanut through puts my picture in the paper, and I think it's a fine way.
Hold it, Mr. Whittier. The engineer just signaled me that we're not picking up your voice very well. With your nose down there on the highway, I can't get the microphone close enough. I wonder if you'd mind standing for the interview.
Well, it's
Stand up, Mr. Whittier.
It's a little early for my hourly rest period, but I guess I could take it now. It's almost time for me to be changing noses anyway.
Well, of course, that brings up the interesting fact that you're not actually pushing the peanut with your own nose.
Well, that's quite correct. I wear a plastic nose over my own nose.
Well, I see that it ties on there with a string that goes around the back. Well, this is fun for us. It's the time we open up our telephones again and present a feature called State Your Case, portion where the listening public can phone in and give an opinion on some controversial issue of the day.
Now, it's your big chance to speak out to the world on public affairs. So call in now. In New York, our number is Quincy 31277. And in today's Honor City, Washington, D.C., it's Bureaucrat 9 1184. Of course, if you're planning to place a call in Washington, you should be aware that it's probably being recorded as evidence against you by the CIA, the FBI, the IRS.
Well, excuse me, Ray, I think you're starting to speak out on a controversial issue yourself there, and only our listeners are supposed to do that, so maybe we might as well chat with the first one who's on the line. State your case. Would you begin by giving us your name, please?
Yes, my name is Ethel Merman Strunk.
Well, if you folks wanted to name you after a famous person, wouldn't it have been more appropriate to pick a man?
Well, when I was born, Mom and Dad only heard Ethel Merman sing on the radio, and they thought she was a man.
I guess it's possible, especially if nobody rushed over to turn the volume down at times. So what's on your mind otherwise?
Well, otherwise, it's my opinion that we ought to make my wedding anniversary a national holiday instead of the 4th of July.
It's interesting. Why?
Well, I figure that if public buildings were all closed and flags were out and people were shooting off skyrockets, it might remind me to buy my wife a present. Then she wouldn't get mad at me every year.
Do you have any idea when your anniversary really is?
Yes, it's December 25th.
And now we return again to Garish Summit and its endless story of intrigue among the socially prominent. There in stately splendor, far removed from the squalid village below, they fight their petty battles over power and money. As action begins, Rodney Murchfield is back in his office after trying without success to collect ransom by faking his own kidnapping. Suddenly, the door opens. Rodney's somewhat younger brother Caldwell enters. Caldwell speaks.
I just want to get my personal items out of the drawer of your presidential desk, Rodney. I kind of moved in while you were kidnapped, figuring the crooks would never send you back alive.
That type of cold conniving is so like you, Caldwell.
Thank you. I consider myself a keen student of human nature. And knowing how I'd strangle you if I ever got my hands around your slimy throat, I assume the kidnappers would do the same. Is this my toothbrush behind the paper clips or yours?
No, probably mine. My overbite makes the bristles get fuzzy that way.
Okay, you know, I still can't understand why the crooks didn't rub you out. In fact, you don't even look like a guy who's been kidnapped. Your hair's neatly trimmed, you've got a new manicure.
Well, I can't discuss it except to say that the kidnapper is a student at a beautician school who chose to do his homework on me.
That sounds pretty fishy to me. I wonder what the cops will think when they start checking out this loony story of yours.
I just have some routine questions, Miss Agatha. Some of Rod...
Oh, say, now we've come to music time here on the Old Bob and Ray Show. And for your afternoon listening pleasure, we swing out to the Skyline Room of the Frimler Hotel in Evansville, Indiana, for the haunting melodies of Lloyd Fletch and his all-male orchestra.
Yes, indeed. This is Buddy Blodgett speaking to you directly from the picturesque Skyline Room of the historic old Frimler Hotel, high atop downtown Evansville, where the elite meet to rhapsodize with Lloyd Fletch and his all-male orchestra. Right now, I'm moving toward the bandstand with our Bob and Ray microphone to have a few words with the maestro himself. Lloyd, welcome to Big Time Radio.
Well, thanks very much, buddy. And on behalf of all the men in my all-male orchestra, let me issue a hearty welcome to the picturesque Skyline Room of the historic old Frimler Hotel overlooking all of Evansville.
And even some of the farmlands beyond, right, Lloyd?
That's right, buddy. We're up on the 12th floor here.
Yep.
So, of course, that gives the patrons of the picturesque Skyline Room a panoramic view of all of Evansville, and even of some of the farmlands beyond.
Right.
We certainly invite your listeners from throughout the area to join us here for late afternoon dancing every weekday, but not Saturday or Sunday, because those aren't weekdays.
Oh, very true. That's very true, Lloyd. Incidentally, as you were issuing that invitation to music lovers throughout Greater Evansville, I was noticing that you don't have much of a crowd here today in the picturesque sky room of the historic old Frimler Hotel. And hey there, boys and girls. It's time for the Charlie Chipmunk Club to come to water, and here to read another exciting Charlie Chipmunk story is your old friend, Uncle Edgar.
Well, thank you, Bob, and hello, boys and girls. For today's story, I want you all to turn to page 22 of this month's issue of the Charlie Chipmunk Club magazine. And there at the top...
I certainly hope you boys and girls haven't forgotten to send in your subscription order for the Charlie Chipmunk Club magazine. 12 big issues delivered to your home for only $18.95. Uncle Edgar?
Thank you. Now, there in the first panel, kids, we see that it's lunchtime at the tiny school for the little forest creatures. And Charlie Chipmunk is telling all his friends about the trip he's going to make to visit his grandmother Chipmunk in the city.
And be sure to notice, boys and girls, that all the little creatures have brought their lunches to school in genuine Charlie Chipmunk lunch boxes. They're made of handsome thin-gauge steel, and each comes with its own Charlie Chipmunk thermos bottle. Only $16.98 at better drug and variety stores. Now back to Uncle Edgar.
Okay, well now in the next panel, we see that Charlie Chipmunk is at home packing his suitcase for that trip to Grandmother Chipmunk's.
And, of course, that's an official Charlie Chipmunk suitcase, gang. Strong vinyl two-suiter in authentic chipmunk brown with black stripes, and the price a remarkably low $69.50. Okay, Uncle Edgar.
Look, Bob, I kind of wish you'd stop horning in this way, you know. We're never going to get the story finished unless you clam up.
Well, it's all those wonderful commercial sponsors that keep us on the air, Uncle Edgar, and I think you and the boys and girls should bear that in mind. And that puts the lid on things for this get-together today, the Bob and Ray Public Radio Show.
Produced for the Radio Foundation by Larry Josephson, who often wears a sweater, but has never been mistaken for Dan Rather.
In the Department of Associate Producers, ours is Marjorie Van Halderen, who believes no one is writing new fortunes for fortune cookies anymore. Technical Director is Malcolm Addy.
And Paul Taubman, a man who can name all of the 7 dwarfs except one. He provided the music.
Sound effects expert, as usual, is Al Schaefer. Engineering by Joe Lopes and Mike Getlin. Production assistants Diana Freed and Stuart Zagnett.
Funding for the Bob and Ray Public Radio Show is by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Through NPR's Satellite Program Development Fund.
Well, now, this is Ray Goulding reminding you to write if you get work.
Bob Elliott reminding you to hang by your thumbs.
For a free picture of Bob and Ray, send a stamped, self-addressed envelope to Bob and Ray Picture, Box 5000, GPO, New York 10116. That's Bob and Ray Picture, Box 5000, GPO, New York 10116.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
This program was independently produced by the Radio Foundation.
And now, from approximately coast to coast, it's the Bob and Ray Public Radio Program.
Thank you very much. It is just that.
Yeah, it's the Bob and Ray Public Radio Program.
I'm Bob.
And look, I'll be Ray then, huh?
All right, okay.
Now we have many new features, some of the old, and of course our Bob and Ray family, Webley Webster, Wally Ballou, Mary McGowan.
Why don't we introduce some of them right now? Webb, you're standing by the closest. Webley Webster.
How do you do? It's a pleasure to be here, I'm sure.
You can save your applause until they've all come forward here. Mary McGowan.
Yes, fine.
Wally Ballou. Yes. Hello, everybody.
Well, it's really going to be wonderful.
And it's going to be beamed by a satellite, I'm told. What does that, what's that mean?
I don't know how it's going to get here, Webb, but it will somehow. And here's more great news. With us today, our Bob and Ray financial advisor, Dr. Rex Latchford, to answer your questions about investment. Doctor, I'm afraid we can only allow a few minutes for this feature because we didn't know you were planning to come by today.
Well, that's a direct result of my latest money-saving idea. I didn't call ahead because I had the phone taken out of my office. Now, I expect to save at least $25 a month that way.
Well, I guess that'll add up over the years if you can operate your office without a phone. But isn't it true you told us last time that you use the title doctor because you're a veterinarian?
That's right. However, I don't need a phone because my business is all mail order, see? I sell good luck charms that light up in the dark and other novelties like that.
Seems like an unusual sideline for a veterinarian.
Well, I'm not exactly a practicing veterinarian. I dropped out of school a few semesters before I got my degree, see?
Well, how can you use the title doctor at all, then?
Well, I don't know. Just get started some way, and people picked it up.
I mean, kind of like a nickname,
Yeah,
you
that's
mean?
it. Yeah, Doc, you know.
Doc.
Yeah, like a nickname. Yeah.
Well, we're glad you're here, even though we weren't expecting you, and I can see our phones are lighting up already with calls from listeners seeking your advice on how to invest their life savings, so why don't you just take over?
Well, fine. I always enjoy talking to people who have extra money they don't know what to do with. Hello. You're on the air with Dr. Rex Latchford.
Hello. I've recently made a large profit selling tickets in the California State Lottery, and I'm looking for some place to invest it.
All right. Incidentally, I didn't know that California had a legalized state lottery now.
It doesn't. That's how I've been able to make such a large profit selling tickets in it.
I see. Well, now that I've had the opportunity to learn...
Now that moment you've all been waiting for has arrived when we again play a portion of our secret Bob and Ray mystery tune. Now, this is your big chance to win a whole array of valuable prizes.
That's right. No one could correctly identify the mystery tune last week, so that means our giant jackpot has now risen to $15. And it's just waiting here for some lucky listener to collect.
Well, that big cash prize is only the beginning, friends. A number of businessmen here in our neighborhood have also donated some really wonderful merchandise gifts. So if you're the first to correctly identify our mystery tune, we'll be sending you a giant jar of chunky-style peanut butter, a dozen legal-size file folders, a full pound of 10-penny nails, and a coupon good for $5 worth of free dry cleaning. Now, those are good prizes.
Now, of course, that dry cleaning prize will be especially nice if the winner happens to live nearby. It's also useful for any out-of-town contestant who may wish to mail his dirty clothes to New York, together with just $3 for return postage and handling.
And speaking of out-of-town contestants, let me say that you're eligible to phone in with your guests on our mystery tune from anywhere in the United States. However, we don't have a toll-free number, and again this week we won't be accepting collect calls.
Right, but that's only part of the big news. In addition, those who phone in long distance while we're taking another call may be put on hold for as long as 15 minutes and thereby experience the thrill of running up a truly impressive charge.
In fact, it could become a long-distance charge you'll want to tell your children and grandchildren about for years to come. So stand by and see if you can identify this mystery tune.
Okay, that's it. That's the clue. That's it.
Now join us as we return again to Garish Summit and its endless story of intrigue among the socially prominent. There in stately splendor, far removed from the squalid village below, they fight their petty battles over power and money. As our drama resumes, wealthy Agatha Murchfield is in jail following her unexpected arrest on charges of stock fraud. Suddenly, her hopes rise when she sees family attorney Bowden Pardue enter the cell block. Agatha reaches frantically through the bars and calls out,
I'm down here on the end, Bowden, just beyond the drunk tank.
I'll be along shortly, Agatha. I'm renewing a friendship here with an old law school chum. He tells me he's in the pokey for teaching his wife a thing or two with a meat cleaver.
Well, I'm sure it must be a fascinating story, but I'm the one who pays you the retainer, so move it over here.
Very well, Agatha. I'm on my way.
Well, I must say you took your time about showing up, Bowden. I've been in the clink for almost 12 hours, even though my bail is less than what I spent on a week's supply of floor wax at the mansion.
Well, I apologize for the delay, Agatha. I received your message last night just as I was leaving to take an important client to dinner at Howard Johnson's. I'm sure you can understand.
No, I really don't understand at all, Bowden. In fact, I'm not even sure why I'm here. The police claim I broke the law by spreading rumors that the Murchfield lead mine had started producing...
Friends, do you realize that Valentine's Day is just around the corner? And once again, you'll probably be caught at the last minute trying to think of an appropriate gift for the one who's nearest and dearest to your heart.
Well, this year it doesn't have to be that way, thanks to the new line of special Valentine Day gift flypaper being offered by the Einbinder people. Now, each strip is beautifully decorated with bright red hearts and cupids. It will be admired by your loved one all winter and help to keep flies off him or her all next summer.
For a Valentine remembrance that's useful as well as decorative, you couldn't ask for more. But for that perfect gift, you must insist on Einbinder flypaper, the brand you've gradually grown to trust over the course of 3 generations.
And welcome again now to the Bob and Ray Public Service feature, Chatting with Dr. Chesney. Now, this is the portion of the show where we invite all of you disturbed listeners to call in and receive some expert advice from the noted psychologist, Dr. Merton Chesney. Say, Doctor, it's good of you to take time from your private practice to be with us today.
I'm interested in your comment that it's good of me to be here. You know, our concepts of good and bad are just personal attitudes that our parents have taught us.
Well, in a general sense, I suppose so. However, I was...
No, there's no doubt about it. So the only question is why your folks taught you that it's good for a psychologist to leave his practice in order to appear on a radio program.
Well, I don't think that specific issue ever came up when I was a child.
You see what happens? We forget how we were taught our moral standards, but we still accept them as fact. Now, close your eyes and search into your subconscious. You're a 2-year-old in your playpen.
No, that's not what I am at all. Now, if you'd be good enough to pick up your phone there and let's get on with this thing.
Why do you imply that it's good to pick up a phone and bad not to?
I don't know. Just pick it up.
I can see the subject is upsetting you, so I'll let it go for now. Pick up the phone. Hello, you're on the air with Dr. Chesney.
Hello? My name is Stanley W. Proxwelder.
Well, sir, we don't want you to give your full name on the air. We'll have to cut that out
okay,
later.
well then let's just say I'm an anonymous parent.
All right.
And I'm having discipline problems with my son, Stanley W. Proxwelder Jr.
How old is the boy?
Oh, I guess he's about 8. Maybe still 5. Hey, kid, how old are you?
Your relationship with your son must not be very close if you have to
He says he's 12, but I don't know. He's a...
Well, once again, we must wend our way out of Studio B and bid farewell to the Bob and Ray Public Radio Show. And remember, there are more of them coming your way soon on this station.
They're produced for the Radio Foundation by Larry Josephson, who likes a surprise as well as the next guy.
Marjorie Van Halderen did a fine job as associate producer.
As did the Heifetz of the Hammond, our musical director, Paul Talman.
Thanks to Al Schaefer, sounding off, and to our production assistant, Stuart Zagnett, for doing his thing.
Engineering was by Mike Moran and Joe Lopes.
Funding in part by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting through the NPR Satellite Program Development Fund.
And now this is Ray Goulding reminding you to write if you get work.
Bob Elliott reminding you to hang by your thumb.
For a free picture of Bob and Ray, send a stamped, self-addressed envelope to Bob and Ray Picture, Box 5000, GPO, New York 10116. That's Bob and Ray Picture, Box 5000, GPO, New York 10116.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
This program was independently produced by the Radio Foundation.